Solo Leveling by Chu Gong. Chapter 46 Part 1 The Architect. At the zenith of his jump, Jinwoo hovered at eye level with the Colossus. Time slowed to a point where he watched a drop of sweat glisten as it flung off him in tiny increments. Jinwoo was in a state of extreme focus, a result of the pressure that one simple mistake could mean the difference between life or death, heightening his abilities to their limits. This is the true power of the agility stat. Jinwoo was amazed to see the epitome of what he could do with this ability. But this was no time to enjoy the fruits of his labor. The gaze of the Colossus was slowly, but surely shifting toward him. Seeing glowing red-hot eyes at this distance gave him goosebumps. It would be the end if the beam so much as grazed him. The sense of danger simultaneously made him nauseous and gave him clarity. Stay calm. Jinwoo stretched out his empty left hand. Ruler's authority. He used the recently upgraded skill to tug at the statue's shoulder. His aim was to drag himself closer to the massive block of stone instead of the other way around. Boom! The statue did move unexpectedly, though very slightly. The strength of the skill had doubled with the ruler's authority upgrade and acted as a gravitational pull now. Jinwoo landed safely on the statue's shoulder. Zing! The red beam accurately struck where Jinwoo had been a mere moment before. Okay, good. He'd bought a couple seconds of safety from the laser now. He ran across the shoulder and streaked toward the Colossus's neck at full speed with the Demon Monarch's dagger tightly gripped in his right hand. Mutilation. Numerous pinpricks of silver light shone on its neck. Shink, 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 shink. Multiple times, he stabbed where the lights were indicating, but doing so had no effect. None of the strikes proved fatal, but mere flesh wounds to the statue. Daggers don't work on it. The Demon Monarch's dagger, which had penetrated the steel-like scales of a boss-level Naga, felt useless in this moment. Just then, Jinwoo spied a gigantic hand coming toward him, so he ran across the back of the neck and onto the other shoulder to avoid being nabbed. En route, he glanced below and realized how dizzyingly high he was. Jinwoo refocused on the statue's profile. It wasn't the first enemy to thwart his dagger attacks. Been there, done that. If I can't pierce it, then I need to crush it. There was a reason he had invested so many points on his strength stat. Determination shone in Jinwoo's eyes as he jumped lightly and struck his left hand against the statue's temple. Crack! His fingers penetrated the surface. Yes! Jinwoo made a fist with his left hand and hung off the statue's face like a professional rock climber clinging to the side of a cliff with one hand. He'd finished his preparations, and now it was the moment of truth. The right side of Jinwoo's back, shoulder, and arm muscles bulged to an impossible degree as he poured an incredible amount of mana into them. He threw the first punch. Pow! Though it had been unaffected by the dagger strikes, the statue's head shook from the impact. The angel statue observed the scene with shock. The mana reverberating from the top of the Colossus filled the length of the temple. The puppeteer couldn't hide its overflowing excitement. The angel hadn't expected Jinwoo to deal with its masterpiece in this fashion, and it looked forward to what would happen next. Kapow! The hunter punched the giant in the face again, and the Colossus briefly wobbled. Jinwoo's attacks were working, but his opponent wasn't one to sit and take it. Whoosh! It raised its gigantic palm as if looking to squash a mosquito. Bam! Jinwoo evaded the hand and landed back on the statue's shoulder. He smirked as it smacked its own face. As soon as the hand moved away, Jinwoo climbed back up and... Pow! Kapow! Bam! Pow! Blam! The awful sound echoed throughout the lair. Crick! Crack! A fissure on the giant's face began spreading out like a spiderweb. The colossus tried in vain to regain its footing and eventually staggered toward the side of the chamber. Stomp, stomp, stomp! The creature's enormous feet hit the ground hard. It appeared as though it was planning to crush Jinwoo by throwing itself against the wall. But before that happens, Jinwoo resolved to end his opponent first and began punching its face harder, faster, and mercilessly. Pow! 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 Stomp! 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 The statue sped up and quickly closed the gap between itself and the wall. Jinwoo took a peek at the approaching collision to measure the distance, and then focused all the power in his right arm for the final blow. His muscles bulged, and his veins throbbed, as an unbelievable amount of mana was concentrated in his arm. Perfect. Right before impact, Jinwoo put all the strength of a level 103 player behind one final swing. Bam! Crack! The colossus dropped to its knees, accompanied by a sound reminiscent of a watermelon being split. Thud! The entire lair shook as the enormous statue crashed lifelessly to the ground. Thump! As the heavy hunk of stone collided with the dry ground, it kicked up a thick cloud of dust from which Jinwoo emerged, unscathed. Phew! He slowly exhaled. Ba-dump, be-a-dump, be-a-dump. His ears were filled with the sound of his own blood pumping furiously. The colossus that had petrified Jinwoo when he first laid eyes on it now lay in a heap on the floor. Nobody had done this for him. This was something he had accomplished on his own. I can do it. He could do anything. Jinwoo became emotional as he recalled the faces of the hunters who had lost their lives in this very place. But the other statues quickly mobilized, denying him time to dwell in the past. They closed in on him, but before they could attack, Jinwoo looked up from his hands. Ruler's authority! Slam! The statue's head slammed into the ground, at which point they stopped moving. Such was the might of the invisible hand of Ruler's authority. Jinwoo looked back down at his two palms. I've become stronger from this fight. He opened and then closed his fists. Powerful energy flowed through his hands. No, through his entire body. He could feel the flow of this energy. His heart wouldn't stop fluttering. It felt like something inside him had been awakened during the life-threatening battle. Clap, 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 clap. As the slow clap reverberated, Jinwoo looked toward the source. The angel statue wore the same creepy smile, and was now applauding with overly exaggerated movements. Extraordinary! Contrary to the manner in which it had greeted Jinwoo, the angel's eyes seemed sinister. Didn't you promise me something? Asked the hunter. The statue had promised him answers, yet Jinwoo was still standing by the end of the test. The angel gave a stiff laugh, having no intention of making this easy for him. Uh-huh. It took a step toward Jinwoo. Your test isn't over yet. Then one more step. After all, and another. The angel statue stopped right in front of him. I'm still here, aren't I? Kriya crack. The wings on the angel's back twisted and tangled until they were transformed into arms, 2 on its shoulders and 6 on its back. The stone angel clenched all 8 of its fists. I am the final test. Jinwoo frowned. Even before Jinwoo could say anything, the statue cut him off. You don't have to worry about my life. Jinwoo recoiled. It had known exactly what the player was about to ask, whether killing it would destroy any chance of getting answers. Surprised? The angel pointed at its own head with one of its 8 hands. All the information about you is in here. Did that mean? Jinwoo broke out into a cold sweat. You do catch on quick. Uh-huh. The angel statue laughed mechanically. but it would be difficult to properly measure your true abilities if you hold back to avoid killing me." At that moment, the angel statue's lips moved quickly, but the voice came from elsewhere. "An urgent quest has arrived. If you do not defeat the enemy by the designated time, your heart will stop. Remaining time, 10 o'clock. It took Jinwoo 1 second to read the message. Tick. Remaining time, 9:59. Jinwoo stared, thunderstruck, at the angel statue. That's right. That's right. Whenever it spoke, the system said the same thing. No sooner than Jinwoo's heart had settled down, it now began pounding frantically once more. His breath quickened, and his hands trembled. As it observed Jinwoo's reaction, the stone angel finally deigned to answer Jinwoo's very first question of, "Who are you?" "I am the architect of the system." "I am the architect of the system." "Considering the chaos in Japan because of the dungeon break, should you really be here, Mr. Kim?" Jinchul asked tiredly. Kim, a reporter, scratched his sideburns as he yawned. "There are plenty of reporters at the scene already, so no need for little old me. Better to be here with the surveillance team and wait for a scoop." Jinchul considered telling the reporter to either scratch his head or yawn, not both. Instead, he just sighed quietly to himself. Kim was pretty much the only reporter who wrote articles that painted the Hunters Association in a favorable light, while everyone else wrote provocative pieces about corruption within the association or the private lives of hunters. No need to turn an ally against us. Which was why Jinchul humored Kim whenever he paid a visit to the surveillance team. Kim let out a long yawn before continuing. "By the way, should you be here while the whole country is in an uproar, Manager Wu?" Jinchul closed the file he was working on and let out another long-suffering sigh before quietly answering. "All the more need for one person to be at the ready." Kim perked up and took out a pen and palm-sized notebook. "That's a cool quote. Could you repeat it one more time so I can write it down verbatim?" "Mr. Kim, you really—" Jinchul's sharp reply was interrupted by a phone call. "Huh?" It was the emergency dispatch. A direct call to him instead of the surveillance team meant it was something urgent. Jinchul hurriedly answered. "This is Manager Jinchul Wu of the surveillance team. Manager Wu, we have a report that may require your attention." Jinchul's eyes narrowed. "What happened? You know the school that was attacked by orcs? Did something else happen?" "Not yet, but the report indicates that a double dungeon was discovered in the schoolyard." "A double dungeon?" Jinchul's eyes widened. "And—" The emergency dispatcher seemed to have something else to say. Jinchul pressed them. "And? I was told that Hunter Jinwoo Sung has entered the gate." There was no time to be surprised, as the angel statue lunged to Jinwoo. Tightly clenched fists came flying at the hunter quick as lightning. His opponent was too close and too fast to evade. Jinwoo's brain made a flash decision based on past experiences in battle. He instinctively raised his arms to block. It wasn't a wrong move, but it wasn't the right move either. Bam! The angel sent Jinwoo flying into a wall. Crack! Pieces of rubble fell to the ground. Jinwoo choked down a pained groan. The punch hurt him more than he'd expected. However, the angel statue was already right in front of his nose before he could recover. Pow! Jinwoo narrowly dodged another punch by tilting his head. The angel's fist left a hole in the wall behind him. But that was only the beginning. With its adversary pinned with his back to the wall, the angel mercilessly threw a barrage of punches. One blow was strong enough to instantly kill a high-rank hunter. Pow, 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 pow. The angel's eyes widened. "He's blocking my punches?" Jinwoo was able to block, divert, and withstand the attacks made with 8 fists using his 2. The angel could only see after images of his hands. The self-proclaimed architect was amazed at the feat. But the result of this fight had been decided from the start. This was just a part of the process. Giving Jinwoo a final test had nothing to do with the angel's will. The angel figured it would be bored throughout. This is entertaining. Little did the angel statue know it would enjoy sparring with a human. Throughout the course of its long life, it never imagined humans could be worthy opponents. At that moment, a light flickered. No, not a light. The human had thrown a punch. Kapow! Jinwoo aimed for its face, sending the angel tumbling. It quickly jumped back on its feet, smiling despite the cracks on its face. The angel couldn't remember the last time it had had this much fun. It was so delighted that it shook with regret that this time would soon come to an end. Meanwhile, Jinwoo could only breathe deeply, unable to revel in the fact that he'd landed a solid hit. It's strong. It was stronger than any opponent Jinwoo had ever faced. The architect of the system. That's how it had introduced itself. For what reason had it created the system? Why had it chosen Jinwoo as a player? What was going on in the world right now? Jinwoo had a mountain of questions. But before I can ask them, he had to defeat it. The hunter clenched his fists tightly. It was then that he felt something warm and wet on his face. Drip. It was blood from a cut on his forehead. I guess I wasn't able to avoid all those attacks. Jinwoo had thought he'd perfectly evaded the blows, but it seemed he had missed one. To make matters worse, blood was seeping into one of his eyes, and he couldn't see properly. On the other hand, his enemy was doing fine. Either way, things weren't looking good for him. I'm at a disadvantage in close-quarter battles. That much was obvious. The angel statue was a few times bigger and had 6 more arms. It was next to impossible to avoid or block strikes coming in such quick succession from different directions. The wound on his forehead proved it. Then, Jinwoo needed to shift the narrative. As he reached this conclusion, the angel threw another punch toward him like a bullet. Blam! The blow struck a wall and brought it crumbling down. The angel turned to see that Jinwoo had already put distance between them before it realized he was gone. I won't lose to it in speed. If Jinwoo could keep some space between them as he attacked. Jinwoo activated Ruler's authority. What? The strong force slammed down on the angel statue. It was the same move Jinwoo had used to kill Baru. However, Jinwoo couldn't believe what he was seeing. The same skill that had moved even the Colossus's torso only bent the angel's neck by a fraction. Jinwoo didn't know with what exactly, but he was certain his opponent was countering with something invisible. How is it doing that? He soon found out. This is really fun. At some point, the deep voice of the angel statue and the female voice of the system had synchronized. The unnatural combination grated on Jinwoo. I'm truly having so much fun. The angel stretched out its 8 arms, and the weapons in the hands of the other statues began to quiver. Is that? Jinwoo's jaw dropped. The weapons floated into the air and flew toward the angel statue. Each of the angel's 8 hands gripped a separate weapon. Its ruler's hand. The angel was able to use ruler's hand as well. Despite not having mastered the skill to the degree Jinwoo had, it was now clear how it had blocked him. His opponent was truly unlike anything he'd ever faced. Tick. Jinwoo's gaze traveled up. Remaining time, 6:19. He had about 6 minutes left. I need to end this quickly. Having discovered that long-range attacks were ineffective, Jinwoo switched gears and summoned a demon monarch's dagger. He had lost track of the other dagger after having thrown it somewhere earlier. 8 weapons against 1 dagger. Ba-dump, be a dump. His heart pounded as he felt cornered. Tack. The angel statue jumped nearly as high as the ceiling and landed in front of him. Crack. The stone tile shattered at the impact, sending pieces of rubble everywhere. Jinwoo raised his dagger, weathering the fine pieces of debris pelting his ankles. I can do this. He would succeed. Jinwoo regulated his breathing as he looked the angel in the eyes. A chill ran up his spine as 8 weapons, including a sword, spear, blade, axe, and hammer, rushed toward him as if they were alive. Phew. He exhaled forcefully and opened his eyes wide. Under these interior lights, which were neither bright nor dark, his movements left a trail. Bang, 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 bang. If bullets could block bullets, would they sound like this? In an instant, Jinwoo and the stone angel exchanged countless blows, causing a cacophony of noises one would hear in a war zone. In a world where everything else was in slow motion, the two engaged in fierce battle that moved against the flow of time. They were evenly matched, with neither inferior nor superior to the other. I can sense it. Jinwoo moved his shoulder ever so slightly. The angel's sword missed him by a gap so small it was unnoticeable to the naked eye. It didn't matter that he couldn't see out of one eye at the moment. Jinwoo's perception had reached its limit and then gone beyond, allowing him to track the movements of his enemy's weapons even without seeing them. He just barely evaded the angel's attacks and landed counterattacks one after another. The wounds sustained by his opponent multiplied. It maintained its speed, but Jinwoo sped up. The angel statue was stunned. The architect didn't have to go this far for the test. However, this human compelled it to come out full force. The statue was literally using its full power, but finding itself matched. How was this possible? The angel stared at Jinwoo suspiciously, and soon understood. There's only a trace, but it's in him. The architect shuddered at the realization. Is this why Jinwoo was able to easily wield such power? Yet, this was something for which the angel had been hoping. As a smile crept across its face, a severed arm flew through the air. The stone angel looked up. The one that had dropped its weapon was its right arm. Erf! Although this was not its real body, it felt pain. It stumbled backward. To think a mere human would. The eyes of the angel statue turned red, and its true nature awakened, pushing its duty to the back of its mind. How dare you! At its exclamation, the other statues rose. Stomp! Even those with their heads bashed and got up from the ground. Jinwoo took note of their positions and, without panicking, threw himself at the architect once more. Clang! The angel used 4 hands to block his dagger, yet its feet still slid backward. Agility, perception, strength, stamina, all of Jinwoo's stats were beyond its expectations. Gra! The angel cried out like an animal, mobilizing the other statues. The battle between Jinwoo and the guardians of the temple was underway. Tick. 302. The countdown continued. Jinwoo's dagger sliced off one of the 6 arms that were formerly wings. Arg! Yet, the retaliation of the revived statues was nothing to laugh about, and it was impossible for Jinwoo to avoid so many incoming attacks. He focused on evading any fatal blows, ignoring the rest to keep up his attack on his primary target. This rapidly depleted his stamina. Clunk! A statue slammed a shield down onto Jinwoo's right shoulder. NGH! Jinwoo looked over his shoulder to see the statue holding the shield, preparing to strike again. Jinwoo frowned. Never mind the other lackeys. He had a grudge against this particular one. Jin Woo separated from the angel statue to slam an elbow into its head. Crack! The mana-powered elbow drop turned its head to dust. In the meantime, other statues quickly surrounded Jin Woo and threw themselves at him. But ruler's authority. Bam! A horde of assailants flew backward as if a bomb had detonated. Huff, huff! But before Jin Woo could catch his breath, the Colossus slammed down its giant fist. Jin Woo evaded the attack with a small jump to the side. Whoosh! The gigantic fist took down dozens of statues near Jin Woo. The hunter ran in a large circle in order to shake off the others as he approached the angel. The architect scowled at Jin Woo, enraged. Once again, the hunter, the angel, and the other statues tangled together. Jin Woo's sweat and blood splattered everywhere, but this lasted only a moment. As these began to evaporate, red steam rose from his shoulders. Statues flew backward. The Colossus pounded its fist. The angel statue's hands moved at lightning speed. And at the center of it all was Jin Woo. Arg! The architect lost another arm, and Jin Woo finally pressed his dagger against the angel's neck. Above their heads, the Colossus had clasped its hands together, preparing to slam them down. Jin Woo calmly put more pressure on the blade at the angel's throat. It was at that moment that the architect voiced its surrender. I've lost. Immediately, the rest of the statues froze. The test is over. Tick. The timer came to a halt as well. Remaining time, 2:11. Steam rose from Jin Woo's body. He lowered his gaze to the angel after confirming the timer had stopped. I have a question for you. I will answer any question within the extent of my knowledge. The angel statue was expressionless as it readily agreed to cooperate with Jin Woo. Jin Woo pondered what he should ask. When he had first asked the angel who it was, he'd been met with a laugh and told he'd asked the wrong question. Now that he knew the angel statue's identity, even more questions flooded his mind. So he followed the statue's advice. Who am I? The ranks of the surveillance team arrived at the location. There were 7 high-rank hunters, the most elite members the association could summon on such short notice. However, Jinchul was fully aware that even this much combat power wouldn't be much help to Hunter Sung. Still, worst-case scenario. They could buy time to let Jin Woo escape. They had come here determined to help however they could. Is that it, sir? I believe so. The hunters stepped out of a van and onto the school grounds. The members of the Bravery Guild had been awaiting them since reporting the incident. Their faces brightened at the sight of the surveillance team. Over here! The guild master ran up to greet them. Jinchul's eyes remained trained on the gate. He sensed an extraordinary energy emanating from it. He turned to his subordinates. Let's hurry! Yes, sir! The hunters of the surveillance team picked up the pace. They crossed the field quickly and arrived in front of the gate, but as they did, Jinchul stopped in his tracks. Manager Wu? Sir? The support team, following him, stopped as well. Jinchul cautiously took off his sunglasses. The hand holding them trembled slightly. What the hell is this? A nauseatingly forceful storm of magic power was brewing. The space around the gate looked distorted by the magic power leaking out from it. Appalled, Jinchul took a step back. Was this an illusion or an omen of bad luck? It almost seemed like a black curtain was covering the gate, like a shadow of death. It made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Jinchul instinctively knew that the fight taking place inside the gate was not one he could join. One of Jinchul's subordinates was alarmed by his pale face. Manager Wu, are you okay? Jinchul asked a question in return. Is there a large guild available nearby? The subordinate searched the association's files. Yes, the Hunters Guild members are on standby in the area. What about the two S-rank hunters? Both Hunter Jong-in Choi and Hunter Hain Cha are scheduled to participate in the raid. Jong-in Choi and Hain Cha. Those two might be able to do something. Jinchul looked back toward the gate again. The tremor in his hand was spreading to the rest of his body. He nervously swallowed, barely able to steady his voice enough to give the order. Tell the Hunters Guild that it's an emergency. Jin-Woo posed the question the angel statue had suggested. His labored breathing soon settled back to normal, like he hadn't been fighting for his life a few seconds ago. Jin-Woo dug in the blade at the angel's neck to prompt a quicker response. A human would have bled out from that type of open wound. It didn't bleed, as it was a statue, so Jin-Woo also didn't have a problem with lopping off its head entirely. Was the angel aware of this, though? Eventually, its lips parted. Finally, the statue's voice was more unsettling up close. You asked me a proper question. The statue smiled. Despite having lost a few arms, and with a dagger sinking into its neck, it showed no fear. Where is its real body? Jin-Woo scanned the entire area, but couldn't locate it even with his heightened senses. If the statue was using a skill to conceal its true form, how incredible would that skill have to be? The angel statue continued. The answer is in you. In me? Jin-Woo, on the alert for any trickery, narrowed his eyes. He had spent 4 years of his life as a low-rank hunter fighting against countless enemies that could have easily killed him. Despite being the weakest of the E rank, he'd managed to survive. Through those experiences, his instincts had been honed to help him make the best possible decisions during the worst possible situations. Those same instincts now warned him of a significant change in the air, and sure enough, ping! The chime was followed by the system, now back to the pleasant woman's voice. Retrieving data from storage. Would you like to accept? Y/N. A screen came up as well. Jin-Woo looked at the blinking yes and No awaiting his input. Huh? Was this another trap? Jinwoo's gaze shifted from the screen to the angel. Its face was blank once more. The choice is yours. Unlike earlier, its voice was now separate from that of the system. A stiff, mechanical-sounding male cadence grated at Jinwoo's ears. Jin-Woo pursed his lips. Data from storage. Did the system have a save file like in a video game? One Jin-Woo could check. Numerous thoughts raced through his head, but he had already made up his mind. This might be his one and only chance to discover the truth, so there was no turning back now. Besides, if this was a trap, the system wouldn't have gone through such a complicated process, as it had the ability to stop Jinwoo's heart at any time. If this was the final test, then I've earned the right to check the file. Jin-Woo briefly recalled what the angel had said before the fight began. If you're still standing when this test is over, I will tell you everything. That will be your reward from me. His reward was the right to check the data. Jin-Woo made up his mind, and having made his decision, he spoke deliberately. Yes! Darkness surrounded him. Ping! And then came the system's voice. You have successfully retrieved the data.